Hey everybody, welcome back to Let's Read Fallout Equestria. You might notice I'm wearing a different shirt. That's because it's a different day. It's actually been 2 days since I recorded the last video. That's because I want some time to wrap my head around how this format might work. And I want to see what your comments on it were, and like your ideas and how you felt it was going. I got a few comments about it. I've thought about it. We'll finish this chapter like this. So we'll finish the chapter with this. The next chapter, again, we'll see what you think, and we'll see what I could come up with, because switching from straight up reading to just audio kind of fucked with me. And I just had some pizza, and it was good, and my voice. That's just
leading to a concrete landing.
That's just
Once at the landing, the rough walls were replaced by stonework. At the end, a very familiar-looking steel door hung open on its hinge arm. The number 24 was emblazoned on the center of the door. Beyond lay a rusted, ruined doppelganger of the place I had once believed would forever be my home. Calamity rushed past me. "Don't stand there gawking. Help me get this door shut before that damn river speals its banks completely and floods this hole." He was trying to push the door physically. I looked down, noticing for the first time that the floor of the cave was already a puddle, 2 inches deep and growing. Moved to action, I rushed to the controls. I paused long enough to check the bolting mechanism, which was actually entirely missing, and making sure I'd be able to open it again. Sat aside that I could, or tried to push up the lever, but it wouldn't budge. Focusing, my horn glowing brightly, I added my telekinetic strength to that of my hooves. With a loud, grinding sound, the lever moved. With a wheeze, the lever arm moved, and the door to Stable 24 slammed shut, groaning in protest. You realize that we just shut ourselves into the evil, scary stable of spookiness, right? I teased my self-invited companion as he stared about the place in wonder. I'm trusting you're right about what you said earlier. Reckon if any pony knows better, it would be you. He shot me a nervous smile. Besides, he added, flapping his wings, not like these are going to do me any good down here, one way or the other. My eyes caught the harness Calamity wore. The Pegasus had twin long-range rifles, one strapped to each side of his body, right under his wings, built into a saddle mechanism. Thin metal reins reached out in front of him, ending in a bit that hovered a few inches below his mouth. By biting on it, the sibling barrels would fire at once. The saddle was designed to reload on command, possibly triggered by pulling on the bit or biting.
I'm taking some K-Cat's advice, and whenever I have something to interject, I just pause the video. Thanks, K-Cat. I was sort of starting to do that in the last video, but since K-Cat thinks it's a good idea, I better do it. But one thing that always bugged me about this crossover is that the guns still have handles and triggers. Why? Here's the thing. In a society without opposable thumbs, or fingers, phalanges, if you prefer, if they invented guns, their guns they might work like ours, but they would not look like ours. I actually think that if ponies invented who here watched Princess Mononoke? Because I think if ponies had guns, their guns would be a lot like the muskets used by the Iron Town in Princess Mononoke. They were big. You hefted them on your shoulder, and instead of having a trigger, that you pulled, they had a sort of a press lever on top. So you hold them up like this, and when you fire, you press down on the thing, and it shoots. If ponies use guns, I think that's actually more along the lines of what they would use, because again, they don't have fingers for triggers. So they need something that they can use with their big-ass hardened hoof things. And some long trigger thing you press down makes sense for their biology. I mean, we know they can hold stuff with their hooves. So they can hold it like this, and when fire, boom. Again, the whole thing with the trigger just don't make sense. Okay, griffins, if they use guns, yeah, you can have the handle trigger. But ponies? You think they would make something that works for them easier instead of having a bit, cause a thing you press down in your mouth, because that's dangerous if you need to talk. And communication is vital in a fight. I mean, clearly they can talk some way, somehow. But I don't know how he does that without accidentally shooting off a couple rounds. And K-Cat, so I'm just going to assume you're the actual K-Cat. Like I said last time, because I know the internet. It's something big for me because I know the internet has people who pretend to be other people's, but I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt. Why bottle caps this time? Fallout 1 explained it by the hub backing them with water. Why Fallout Equestria? Because there's probably a hub equivalent, but I don't know if it comes up. If it does come up, just say it comes up later. If it doesn't, I would like to hear some explanation, please. All right, just fucking triggers and handles, man. It gets me. I dislike it.
Differently. I couldn't tell. Hey, Calamity, I've been meaning to ask you, what is that? I pointed a hoof at the contraption. What? He looked around, spinning in place. I couldn't suppress a laugh. He stopped looking at me, then back behind him again once more before. What do you mean, my battle saddle? I nodded. Fine piece of work, ain't it? I designed it myself. He reared up, showing off proudly. Then, after my expression asked, You mean to tell me you ain't never seen a battle saddle before? I shook my head. Well, ain't that a thing? He strutted about. There's basically two types of firearms, loosely speaking. There's the small ones that the pony can stick in his mouth and levitate round if he's a unicorn. Then there's battle saddles, for all the firearms that are just too big and heavy to have, and too much kick to wield without support. Now I've seen all kinds of weapons built into battle saddles. Machine guns, rocket launchers. Rocket launchers?
Yeah!
My tail drooped and ears fell back at the thought. Yep. Even magical energy weapons. He paused. Though those are so damn scarce you're not likely to ever see one of them yourself. I filed that away for future reference.
They're not that scarce.
After checking my pit buck for radiation or similar dangers, and the EFS for any glows of hostility, I took a long gulp from my canteen and began plotting our course. I was confident from my lifetime in a stable that I could navigate this one with no problems. If the layout was the same, the door to the right in the next room should lead to the stairs headed downward. That would be the cafeteria, living quarters, school, and clinic. To the left, a corridor leading deeper into maintenance, including the ever-familiar pit buck technician maintenance stall. Without a second thought, I decided we'd go right first. Calamity, meanwhile, had scouted all the immediately adjacent rooms. He came back with a mildly surprised look. They got a box of dynamite in the storage room over yonder. Okay, that was a bit surprising. I felt my ears stick up. You weren't going to find that in Stable 2. What was in it?
It's a safe stable.
Dynamite, I reckon, Calamity said, mock scholarly. In truth, I don't know for sure. It was locked, and I wasn't about to go shaking it like a birthday present to try and figure it out. On the off chance it might be full of, dynamite. I followed the rust-colored Pegasus back to the storage room to check it out. But after 3 tries and loss of 2 more bobby pins, which I was beginning to run alarmingly low on, I had to admit the lock was beyond my self-proclaimed expertise. Instead, I suggested we move on along the path I originally planned. The door to the living quarters slid open with a reassuring hiss. The lights gave off a familiar whine, those that still worked. Already, Stable 24 was making me horribly homesick. Worse, the dull ache in my heart mixed with a disconcerting sense of wrongness. Seeing this place in rust and ruins was unpleasant in a way that I couldn't describe. It was like walking through my own personalized version of the post-apocalypse. I was finding
vaults really are the creepiest fucking place when there's no one in them.
Doors that wouldn't open. The floor was strewn with tin cans and litter. The generators, uncared for, were making an odd rhythmic churring. And from deeper within came chugging, banging, and hissing sounds that had no place in a stable at all. This was a demoralizing, eerie, spook house version of Stable 2. I turned to look back at Calamity, and caught him picking up bottle caps off the floor. I bit my lip, bracing against a wave of emotion that shrieked that he was desecrating this place. Looting and scavenging was survival out in the equestrian wasteland, And, logically, that applied to here, too. But, even more than stripping goods off of fresh corpses, this felt like grave robbing. Unholy.
Oh,
My feelings scattered as,
Little
overhead,
Pip's so
a burst of
adorable.
thunder hit so close to the cave that we could hear it inside the stable. My heart thumped in my chest. What the hell? I stammered, waving my forehoofs to indicate the sky outside. I told you. Thunderstorm. That isn't like any storm I've read about in my textbooks, I encountered. Calamity looked at me with a softly mocking expression. Weather ain't like it used to be. The sun and moon ain't guided through the sky by ponies anymore. We Pegasus. The goddesses Celestia and Luna move the sun and the moon through the sky each and every day, I shot back, scandalized. How could he even say that? That was like blasphemy. Oh yeah. He rolled his eyes at me. From their place in pony heaven. Right. I bristled. He stared quietly until I gave in, motioning for him to continue. As I was saying, we Pegasus ain't around scheduling the weather, neither. Equestria's weather's gone wild. I felt a chill down my mane. Through the metal walls on the mountain, we felt the percussion of the storm. I had begun to wonder how over-engineered Stable 2.
I'm starting to think Stable 2 was actually an experiment and not one of the few real vaults. Or maybe this society ponies honestly think Celestia and Luna are gods. Well, technically, if you're going by the classical, like the Greek classical, they kind of are. Because that's the thing between the Abrahamic modern religions of what a god is and the classical versions of what gods are. Because classical gods can die. Gods can lose. Gods are not omnipresent. And that's what I like about them. They're more relatable and understandable. Where in the Abrahamic and modern faiths, they're all-powerful, omnipresent beings. So I guess Lil Pip's right. Celestia, through classical interpretations, would be a god. Alright.
Must have been for me to have never heard of storms like these. Obviously, it was designed to stay closed longer, which I was figuring probably accounted for other architectural differences I had started to notice. Huh, I thought out loud. There's only one section of bathrooms. At least, only one in the living quarters section of the stable. Back in Stable 2, there were two. One for mares, one for stallions. The floor outside was wet, and I could hear a roar, gurgling, splashing sounds from behind the bathroom door. Also, unlike Stable 2, Stable 24 was connected to the aquifer, its water supply merely purified with antitoxin and anti-radiation spells. With the downpour outside, every sink and toilet was backing up. The same went for the water fountains. The one between the school and the living quarters was spraying brown water. The horrible noises were coming from the pipes and plumbing rather than unnatural monsters. I stopped dead as a red spot flashed up on my compass of my EFS. Somewhere, just ahead of us, was surely one of the creatures Crane had talked about. Not, I realized, that either of us had bothered to get a description. So, any idea exactly what sort of varmints we're supposed to be looking for down here? I whispered as we both crouched down,
You really just
moving as
do
stealthily as possible.
countryisms.
While bathrooms weren't segregated, sleeping areas were. The main floor for stallions, and a lower one for mares. That, too, was different than Stable 2, where the quarters were geared towards families. My EFS felt annoyingly limited, unable to tell me which level the creature was
Bathrooms
on,
are unified,
just that it
yet
was almost dead ahead now.
sleeping
I
quarters
levitated out little
are
Macintosh, ready as I could be.
segregated by sex.
Actually, no, Calamity whispered back. And I recall, we ain't supposed to be looking for 'em. We're supposed to just close the door. As I recall, I retorted, maybe a slightly bit less quietly than I should have. I'm supposed to be closing the door. You weren't supposed to be anywhere. I couldn't deny that he had a point. In fact, if trapped inside a creature's lair, poking around was probably the dumbest thing a pony could possibly do.
It's a death claw.
On the other hoof, this was another stable.
Are those
My
in this?
curiosity and sense of connection
What
wouldn't
are they?
allow me to leave it unexplored. And if I was trapped in here for a few hours,
What is a death claw now? I
no
think
time
about
like
it.
the present. Calamity shook his head, but followed all the same. We moved a few steps closer, and the red spot winked out. I turned quickly, trying to see if it had somehow gotten behind us, but there was nothing. Either the creature had evaporated, or we were right on top of it, one floor up. We crouched there, keeping still and quiet. After a moment, the red spot appeared again, once more right in front of us. And a few seconds later, it vanished once more. This time, apparently, for good. Aside from age and deterioration, the school in Stable 24 looked exactly like the one back home. Students' tables, all in nice little rows. A sharing area with toys. The teacher's desk, with a terminal, pencils, and even a long rotted apple. The only real difference was a large glass tank, which could have once been an aquarium. Even with rusted walls, this felt like home.
Oh,
It should have been comforting. Instead,
it's really
it
creepy.
was unpleasantly weird. And it was putting me on edge. The constant banging and screaming of the pipes was adding to my discomfort and giving me a mild headache for good measure. Worst of all, we had encountered 3 more ghosts, hostile entities that appeared on my eyes forward sparkle, but nowhere else. A matter not at all helped by the fact that Calamity had no pip buck of his own, so he couldn't tell what I was reacting to. I was beginning to worry that my eyes forward sparkle, or even my pip buck itself, had been damaged or warped by exposure to the wasteland. Unlikely, I reassured myself,
tough.
remembering that they were made to withstand much worse than this. What was more likely, and less comforting, was that the creatures down here had magic of their own. You ever heard of any pony named Prince Celeste? What? I trotted over, brow furrowing. Let me see that, I said, snatching the book from the desk in front of him with a glow of telekinesis. I read a few sentences, then slammed the book shut to look at the cover. It was a children's storybook. The Stallion on the Moon? Calamity chuckled. You know, I think I remember my ma reading a story like that. Only it was a mare in the moon, if I recollect. That's because it's supposed to be the mare on the moon. Quickly, I began looking through the other books on the desks and school shelves. When I was done, I had reached important feeling observations. 1. Every significant pony in every book had been changed into a stallion. Well, I suspect some of them were stallions to begin with. 2. I continued undaunted, even though my voice sounded strained even my own ears. Not one story or textbook has anything but the vaguest references to the history or governance of Equestria. Not that Stable 2's libraries were stellar in that regard. The most recent history in any of our textbooks was over a generation old. But this here wasn't a lack of material. This was a deliberate alteration of facts and context. In the portion of the stable dedicated to education, it was... You know, you're gonna burst something if you don't...
Give me a minute. I see what the fuck this stable is for. If we're going to do this, I need my favorite drink.
Won't calm down a touch. I tossed the book I was holding into a corner with malice. I was about to trot out, indignation wrapped about me like a coat, when I remembered the terminal sitting on the teacher's desk. The screen was giving off a soft glow. I trotted over and prepared to...
We're going to talk about this.
Only to be slightly disappointed
Goddamn.
and offer up a secret so readily. Such as they were, there were entries mainly filled with notes on attendance and grades. 2 stuck out, though. First, had a real surprise when we tested the young unicorns on their magic today. I had all my little ponies bring in their pets and show me how they could make them levitate. Simple enough, although a squirming animal can add a level of difficulty for foals at this age. I had to let both Butter and Paradance each borrow the class mascot, since neither have a pet of their own. Paradance was thrilled, but I think Butter is terrified of the snake, although she's been told it's defanged and harmless. Needless to say, Butter didn't do very well. The real surprise was little Quanta, who has been struggling with even minor levitation all year. Now, I know these things have never been recorded in girls, but I can't imagine any other explanation. We had a full magical epiphany occur right in our classroom. Quanta not only levitated herself, but she let out a flash of energy that affected all the pets in the room. Most just panicked and had to be recovered, but some, including our mascot, seemed to have vanished completely. And strangest of all, the arcane flash seems to have turned Carrot Tail's ugly old cat into, well, an even uglier old cat. It only lasted a moment. Quanta seems fine. Didn't even realize what she'd done. Of course, parents had to be called, and Carrot Tail was traumatized. It'll be a miracle if I can teach these foals anything for the rest of the week. Meanwhile, I'm going to write up a proposal to have another unicorn stallion watch over these tests from now on, just as a precaution. The second entry that stuck out was 4 days later, and it was from the last entry on the terminal. I expected a few parents to keep their Colts and fillies home after the excitement at the beginning of the week, but by now,
This is a problem for me.
Instead, attendance is at its lowest yet. Over half of my students have skipped their classes today. If things haven't turned around by the end of the week, I'm going to start calling parents. And if that doesn't work, maybe even the overstallion. I stared at the last entry for a while. Wait, the overstallion? Calamity looked at me curiously. What's wrong? This overmare of the stable was an overstallion. He blinked, and then his eyes narrowed just a little. Now what's wrong with that? The overmare is supposed to be an overmare. That's what's wrong. It was like explaining to a child, but instead of understanding, his eyes narrowed even more. Are y'all saying a fella can't do what a gal can do? Taken aback suddenly. No, it's not that at all. I waved my hooves in negation. It's just the way it's supposed to be. It's tradition. He didn't move. His voice was very even. You're saying that even if there was a fella who was better at leading a stable than any other pony, stallion or mare, and had the cutie mark to show for it and everything, that he wouldn't be allowed on account he was a buck. I gulped, taking a step back. Damn it, but I was right. There was nothing I could say to explain that I was right without digging myself deeper. So instead, I just clammed up and said nothing. Calamity turned and walked out of the classroom.
Okay, we're going to stop this video here because we're at 21 minutes. I have problems with this. I have some serious fucking problems with this. That's Kaiser Legion territory, but without the awesomeness. Okay? The only reason I don't kill Kaiser every game is because he's a Roman. These guys ain't Romans. I can't even come up with an argument by how fucking... Ooh. You ever get that angry where you have a lot to say, but your anger and disgust stops you from saying it? It's kind of what I am right now. I need... Goddamn. Because institutionalized sexism. I've admitted on the show. I know it's a story, but I've admitted on the show I am quite possibly one of the most liberal people you could ever meet. So, and I know it's just a story, but whenever I see, like institutionalized racism, sexism, hatred, whenever I see something like that, not just being allowed, but encouraged and reinforced by the whatever institution, government, whatever, it gets me murderously angry. Like, I got anger problems, guys. I admit it, but makes you want to take a crowbar to somebody. I'm glad this stable's destroyed. Because I know that if this stable ever opened up and tried to form a society, we would have got Kaiser's Legion, potentially. And that's... no. That's no good. No. God, I have such problems with this. I had to go get a fucking Dr. Pepper, which... it calms me down. Dr. Pepper, favorite drink since I was like 5. It calms me down. Just... things like this make me so... furious and hateful and angry. I had to get up and leave the room for a second to get... Whoo, boy. Well, I'm sorry that children had to die. I'm sorry that people who didn't know better. That's it. I cannot hate the ponies in this vault because they don't know any better. I can hate their ancestors who first went to the vault because they grew up in a society that did know better, but they choose to ignore it. I don't hate them. I'm sorry they had to die. I hate their ancestors because they sound like a bunch of fucking assholes. But what I... Ooh... It's been a couple days. Did we learn who made the vaults? Stable Tech, I know, but who owns Stable Tech? I see how this story's going. It's going to be somebody we know. Twilight has the Ministry of Technology. Was it Twilight? Fuck, I can't remember. I have to go back and look through again. It just makes me so angry. I need to go play some games.